Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with another new topic in living world. What is living? We'll try to understand the differences between living and non-living beings in this video, and also I'm going to define what are the particular features which will make or create difference between living and non-living beings. Let's begin our video. When we try to define living, we conventionally look for distinctive characteristics exhibited by living organisms. So when we want to understand, when we want to define any living organism, so what we are going to do? So first is we'll look up to the characteristic features which are shown or exhibited by the living organisms. So what do you mean by characteristic feature here? Characteristics are nothing but it can be any external feature or it can be the ability of that particular organisms. So say for example, the type of nose, the color of eyes, the pattern of the walking pattern, or we can say the different abilities like ability to read, ability to walk, ability to talk. So all these things can be expressed or understood as the characteristic feature of any living organism. It can be humans, it can be animals. If it is an animal, it will be having different characteristic features when compared to the humans. In the same way, for each and every living organism, it will be having a particular or a peculiar type of characteristic features. It can be its ability or it can be the feature, morphology. Growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as unique features of living organisms. So when we think about or when we think of the living organisms, immediately what will strike on our mind, that is growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment, and also the response to the environment. So these are the very common features. When these are the four important features when we want to differentiate between the living and non-living, because we all know reproduction or sensing the environment or growth cannot be shown by the non-living beings. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self-replicate, self-organize, interact, and emergence to this list. So we can also add certain more features to the living organisms like metabolism. So we all know what is metabolism, the sum total of chemical events which are taking place inside the living organism. So each and every organism is made up of at least a single cell. Even in unicellular organism, you can observe that a single cell is performing each and every activity for that particular organism, and all the necessary events, chemical events which are taking place inside a living organism or a living cell is said to be the metabolism. Ability to self-replicate, each and every organism, it is going to increase its race by the process of replication. The cells, even inside us, they will be replicating to form the new cells from the pre-existing cells. Self-organize. We all know how in multicellular organisms, different cells are going to organize into tissues, tissue systems, organs and organ system. Even that can be seen in higher organisms. Interact. So interaction is always there between environment and the organism. There is certain kind of response. You can say there is predatorship or whatever sense of, you can say that there are certain organisms which will immediately react to the changes in the environment. Each and every organism will be reacting with the changes in the environment. It can be temperature, salinity, pH, different conditions. So all this can also be added to this list. Let us try to understand each of these. So some of the important ones are listed here. So we are going to understand each and every feature here. The first one, all living organisms grow. Increase in mass and increase in number of individuals are twin characteristics of growth. So first we are going to start with the phenomenon, that is growth. What do you mean by growth? Growth has two important twin characteristics. So when we are talking about growth, we are trying to say about two important things which are associated with the growth. One is growth can be increase in mass, that is increase in the mass or weight of the particular organism, or increase in number of individuals. So there are two ways to express growth. One is increase in number. When you talk about the unicellular organism, it is having only single cell. So whenever it is reproducing, it is increasing its mass as well as its number. So from a single cell, there will be two cells in the initial replication, and later on it will be increasing exponentially. So increase in number of individuals can also be called as growth along with the increase in mass. So when you consider about when you consider the higher organisms, a single cell, when they are growing in size, they will be adding the mass to that particular cell. So increase in mass and increase in number, both are characteristic features of growth. A multicellular organism here a multicellular organisms grows by cell division. So we all know that the multicellular organisms will grow by cell division, just like what I have mentioned before. In plants, this growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. And growth in plants, how it is different compared to the animals. In plants, the growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. So they are having infinite growth pattern. So they will be growing continuously. The cells will be showing indefinite growth pattern. In animals, this growth is seen only up to certain age, but for animals it is restricted. It is having only a certain period of time where the growth will be taking place. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace lost cells. But when we observe the internal functions of the cell, each and every cell will be forming a new cell. We all know about the Rudolf Virchow, who has explained regarding the formation of new cells. So according to him, the old cells will form the new cells. New cells will be arising from the pre-existing cells. So this is what given here. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace the lost cells. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. So this can also be observed. We all know unicellular organisms like amoeba, they will be growing by cell division, and this can be easily observed in lab conditions under microscope. In vitro means lab condition. In majority of higher animals and plants, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. In majority of higher animals and plants, so most of them, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. What do you mean by mutually exclusive? They are completely separate events in higher animals and plants. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. So whenever the mass is being added to the body of a particular organism, it is considered as growth. Then what about the organisms which are unicellular? Mutually exclusive means both are separate. Growth and reproduction, they are not simultaneous. They are happening at different times. But in the case of unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive events. They are connected with each other. So when you talk about a unicellular organism like amoeba, in amoeba, let us say growth is happening, mass is increasing, and it is going to give rise to two amoeba later. So reproduction as well as growth, they are simultaneous and they are connected events. Whereas for higher organisms, growth may not be connected with reproduction, but for unicellular organisms, both growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive events or connected events. But for multicellular organism, it is not necessary that growth and reproduction are inclusive events or connected events. Sometimes reproduction also needs growth, but it is not connected. Growth may not require reproduction. So normal cells also will be showing the growth, but it doesn't necessarily, it is not necessary that reproduction is also taking place at the same time. That is the meaning. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as a criterion for growth. But what we observe, what we are going to understand is the differences between living and non-living. So once we have studied about all the different characters associated with different type of living organisms, we are going to compare it with the non-living objects. Do we see any growth in non-living objects? Think about it. So once you think, you will understand that the increase in body mass is also happening with certain non-living beings like mountains, sand dunes, boulders. They even grow. There is accumulation of or accretion of mass. We all know that mountains will increase in size, sand dunes will increase in size by accumulation of material. That can also be called as growth. However, this kind of growth exhibited by non-living objects is by accumulation of materials on the surface. So it is happening externally. It is not internal growth, but it is happening externally. But in the case of living organisms, growth is from inside. So in living organisms, growth is from inside. That is what mentioned here. Growth, therefore, cannot be taken as a defining property of living beings. So here, there are two important terms to be remembered. One is defining feature and other is a characteristic feature. So there are many characteristic features which we have discussed before in the first para. That is, we have growth, reproduction, consciousness, and also metabolism, or you can say reproduction. So all these type of features are said to be the characteristic features. But what is a defining features? How a defining feature is different from a characteristic feature? Defining feature is the one which is seen in all the living organisms without any exception, and it should be absent from the non-living being. So this is the key point to be remembered. This is very important. Mainly in NEET, you will be confused with the defining feature and the characteristic feature. Characteristic feature is anything. It can be ability, it can be a morphological feature, it can be anatomical feature, whatever it is called as a characteristic feature. So characteristic feature doesn't have any exception here, but when you are talking about a defining feature, it is necessary that it should be present in all the living organisms without any exception, and it should be absent from the non-living being. So when we consider growth as a defining feature, can you think that growth can be called as a defining feature here? No. Why? Because growth is exceptionally growth is present in all the living beings. That is true. But the second criteria, it is not satisfied here. What is the second criteria? It should be absent from the non-living beings, but it is seen in certain non-living things. So we cannot call growth as a defining feature. Coming to the second one is the reproduction. Reproduction is to produce the new ones or young ones from the parental organisms. That is a definition for reproduction. Reproduction likewise is a characteristic of living organisms. So we all know each and every living organism, they tend to reproduce, they tend to produce the new organisms or their younger ones to increase its race and to maintain the its, what you can say, they will maintain their race by reproducing themselves. In multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny possessing features more or less similar to those of parents. So in multicellular organism, reproduction refers to the production of progeny. It is nothing but producing the progeny or the younger ones possessing the features more or less similar to those of the parents. They will be very much similar to their parents. They are not same, exactly not same, but they will be having almost similar traits which is seen in the parent. Invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. So mainly in multicellular organism, we talk about the sexual reproduction. There are two types of reproduction, asexual and sexual. Asexual will involve only a single parent. There will be no complex events like mating, or you can say production of the zygote. All these necessary things are mainly seen in the complex reproduction process, that is a sexual reproduction, which you will be having idea regarding this type of reproduction. So I am not going to discuss in detail here. Organisms reproduced by asexual means also. So lower organisms mainly tend to show the asexual reproduction. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to the millions of asexual spores they produce. So lower organisms like fungi, they mainly reproduce through the asexual spores. The parental organism will be forming a gamete or a spore-like structure, and it is going to germinate to form the new fungi. In lower organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. We all know what is budding. In hydra and yeast, a new daughter cell will be pinched out from the parental cell, and later on it will be separated from the parent body. It is budded out and it is forming the new organism, which is called as budding. In planaria, flatworms, we observe true regeneration. So what do you mean by regeneration? Regeneration is nothing but a fragmented part of the organism. When it is separated, it will be forming a complete new organism. That is mainly seen in the flatworms like planaria. A fragmented organism regenerates the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism. The fungi, the filamentous algae, the protonema of mosses all easily multiply by fragmentation. So fragmentation is also seen in certain lower organisms and also some plants. Here the examples are mentioned. The fungi will show fragmentation. Filamentous algae and mosses, the bryophytes, protonema, the initial stage of mosses, can also show the multiplication by fragmentation. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth. So that is what I have mentioned before. Reproduction is synonymous with growth. So growth happened means it is directly implicating that it is showing reproduction as well. So both are connected events. As I said before, once a unicellular organism is showing growth, growth is connected with the reproduction as well. It will be showing maximum growth during the time of reproduction. And if the reproduction is happening, definitely the growth is happening, and both are happening simultaneously in the unicellular organisms. So we say that growth and reproduction in unicellular organisms is synonymous, or you can say those two events are mutually inclusive events. They are not separate events, they are connected events. Increase in number of cells. So here growth, that is increase in the number of cells, it is explained here. We have already defined growth as equivalent to increase in cell number or mass. So anything can be called as a growth. Hence we notice that in a single celled organism, we are not very clear about the usage of these two terms. So we will not be separating these two terms. If you are using reproduction, there is no need to use the growth term, or if you are picking the growth term, it is not necessary to mention about the reproduction. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce. Now comes the point. Now we are going to see whether it is a characteristic feature or a defining feature. So what are the major rules for a defining feature? It should be present unexceptionally in each and every living organism, and it should be absent from the non-living. Let us check the reproduction. Can it be called as a defining feature? Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce. Like we have some exceptions here: mules, sterile worker bees, infertile human couples. Certain couples could not produce the offsprings. The same way, we have some sterile worker bees in honeybee colony, and even we have the mules. So all these living organisms, though they are living organisms, they are not going to reproduce. So this is the first failure, that we cannot say that it is a defining feature. Hence, reproduction also cannot be an inclusive defining characteristic of living organism. Of course, no non-living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. So here, the second rule is satisfied, but the first rule is not satisfied. In the case of growth, the first rule is satisfied, but the second rule is not satisfied. What is the first rule? It should be unexceptionally present in all the living organisms. And what is the second rule? It should not be seen in any of the non-living beings. Let's study the third important characteristic feature. Another characteristic feature of life is metabolism. All living organisms are made of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, size, function, etc., are constantly being made and changed into some other biomolecules. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. So here I'm going to conclude this video here. I will be explaining regarding metabolism in detail in the next video. So here let us see what is the definition for metabolism. Metabolism is nothing but the you can say the sum total of all the chemical reactions which are taking place inside a living organism or a living cell. When we talk about unicellular organism, it is having only one cell. So one cell having thousands, millions of reactions taking place every time. So chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, sizes, function, etc., are constantly being made and they are getting changed into different biomolecules. This is how the chemical reactions are taking place. We have different type of chemical reactions. You might have been seen in your lower classes about respiration, photosynthesis. There are many events which are taking place, many different type of chemical reactions which are taking place in order to produce a single product like glucose in photosynthesis. In the same way, in order to release the CO2, oxygen, the plants will be utilizing the CO2 and it is forming different type of intermediate compounds, chemical compounds, to generate the final product. So this is how different type of reactions are taking place. But the most important thing here is you have to understand the metabolism is taking place mainly in two ways. One is anabolism and other is a catabolism. Catabolism, the name itself indicate there is something which is cut down. Catabolism means cut down or formation of smaller molecules from the bigger molecules. Say for example, we have the starch. When the starch is formed into glucose, a monomer, then we can call it as catabolic event. In the same way, we have the opposite to catabolism is the anabolism. Anabolism is nothing but the formation of smaller, larger molecule from the smaller ones. Like in photosynthesis, if you take, we have carbon dioxide, water, and also we have different sunlight, the usage of sunlight and chlorophyll. The plant is going to produce the starch material or the glucose. So that is a kind of anabolic event. So we can take any type of example. Even in respiration, the glucose is broken down to form the CO2 and also the oxygen, and also water will be released. So that is a kind of anabolic event. So we have different type of reactions. We can give n number of examples to this. So this is about the metabolism, the basic thing which I have explained in the metabolism. We'll go into detail of the metabolism in the upcoming video. Thank you.